The file that you use is determined strictly by personal preference. These are two of the most common types: a Pippin file and an 8-inch long pattern maker's file. My favorite is the pattern maker's file. I use the tip for most of the cutting and the wider part of the file to widen the cuts. The most important thing in selecting a file is to choose a very fine cut. Both of these files are a number 4 cut, which I personally prefer. A number 2 cut will also work for impressioning, but it is somewhat coarser than I like. As you will see, it is important that the file leave behind a very fine matte surface. With the proper surface on the key, the marks will be much easier to see. The finer the matte surface, the easier it will be to see the marks. This is a Pippin file, which is sometimes referred to as an appleseed file. In fact, the word Pippin actually means appleseed. Many people like the teardrop shape for impressioning. They use the sides of the file to widen the cuts and the rounded edge of the file to deepen the cuts. You are the only one who can determine which file is right for you. Try both and use the one that you can control the best, because control is what's really important. That completes the tool section. Now let's take a look at a very basic technique that is absolutely essential for successful impressioning: proper filing techniques. Impressioning files only cut in one direction. That's on the forward stroke of the file. Dragging the file backwards through the cuts is known as backfiling. This does not remove any metal. In fact, it destroys the fine matte surface that you're trying to put onto the key in the first place and makes your marks harder to see. Because of the necessity to keep the file in the cuts for proper spacing, it is sometimes easier to backfile the cut. Pull the file backwards through the cuts. Just make sure that your last few strokes across the key are always in the forward direction. This will leave a nice matte surface for the marks. Another important technique is called draw filing. This is bringing the impressioning file down the length of the blade sideways. This is to prepare the key blank before it is inserted into the lock for impressioning. The point is to remove any plating that's on the key and prepare the top edge of the key to accept the impressioning marks. That is, to put the matte surface on the blade of the key. Some people sharpen the blade into a knife blade. This will enhance marks sometimes, but I feel it's too easy to file away too much of the blade and actually lose marks. I will only blade the key if I'm having trouble getting marks in the first place. Here's our key blank as seen from above. This one has been prepared for impressioning. Notice that it has a very smooth matte surface, a series of small lines running very uniformly across the surface of the blade. This one has not been prepared. It has plating across it and the surface is very rough. If you started with the blank this way, it would be very hard to see your marks. The prepared key blank, on the other hand, virtually anything that touches the blade of that key will leave some sort of mark that we can interpret. Notice how changing the light changes the appearance of the blade of the key. This is a very important concept. As you are impressioning, you want to roll the key from side to side and change the lighting on the blade of the key. That will sometimes enhance the marks and sometimes it will hide them, but by moving it you will be able to see the marks much easier. Here are two forward key blanks. The one on the left has been prepared, the one on the right has not been prepared. You can see how uniform the surface of the prepared key is in contrast to the rough plated surface of the unprepared key blank. I cannot overstress how important it is to properly prepare the key blank before you ever put it in the lock.